For those of you who know me in person or maybe on Facebook, you know that I have certain opinions about things to do with Oklahoma State athletics. But I hope you also know that I try very hard to keep uh, football and sports preferences separate from religious activity. You know, as much as I want OSU to dominate OU in every possible category, I'm not offering masses or praying novenas for the success of Bedlam football. It just seems to me an inappropriate thing to say, well, God is on our side and not yours because it's the side that I'm on. No, that's not appropriate. God is for everyone. I can't say how he prefers sports to turn out. But I want to address this NCAA infractions case with Oklahoma State because it's something that is not of that kind. I think there actually is a true and legitimate injustice that has happened here. Really, it's not a religious issue per se, but it is a moral cause. Now, I also want to say in this case that there are lots of other, perhaps, not perhaps, certainly more worthy moral causes that could be discussed. And maybe I'll get to those someday. But this one is something that is pretty visceral and tangible and widely prevalent right now, something that really anybody can attach to. So I think it's a good thing to make something positive from. For those of you who may not be aware, what happened is that 5 or 6 years ago, there was an assistant coach who was taking bribes from Adidas, the shoe company, to funnel players to Oklahoma State. However, no other coaches knew about it. The administration did not know about it. No players actually took him up. No players actually came because of it. And effectively, no benefit was gained and nothing happened. He had this intention. He took some money personally, but effectively, nothing happened. And so case was closed, went to the FBI, that kind of stuff. Um, and there was expectation of some punishment, of course. If someone in the university does wrong in an athletic department, we're used to that kind of punishment. And at first, the suspension for a season and some other things were doled out, and we appealed thinking, come on, there is no way that what happened, specifically the university and the team, did not benefit whatsoever. It was unknown to anybody else. Surely they won't hand down such a harsh penalty. But we kind of thought it might happen because the NCAA appeals process is notoriously ineffective. Almost never are appeals or is the original conviction overturned. So we kind of thought it would happen. And yet when it came down yesterday, it was still a shock and a surprise. Mainly because the punishment, while there does need to be some punishment, it seemed to be massively out of line with what actually occurred. The people who are punished are current players, current coaches, the university, and fans, not a single of whom had anything to do with what happened. Again, there does need to be some punishment, maybe some fines or some sort, because you can't just set up a situation where the coach could come in, do some stuff, and then just get fired, and there's no punishment for the university. Like, okay, needs to be something. But it's pretty much universally agreed that the punishment the NCAA gave is vastly out of line with any real notion of justice. It does not fit what happened. And furthermore, and this is getting into more of the moral issue, more of a systemic problem, is that what they've done is simply create a culture of fear. They haven't actually addressed any moral failing. They've, in fact, just heavy-handedly created fear as a way of preventing such things from happening. Ironically, in the name of protecting students. So what they're doing, they are punishing practically, though maybe not their intention, they are practically and effectively punishing kids, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who were 15 years old when this happened, and coaches who weren't here when it happened, university who didn't know about it happening, who didn't give permission for it. Uh, and they are creating a situation where now everybody is going to be constantly looking over their shoulder and fretting and stressing because some tiny little sin might result in massive, unequivocal punishment. That does not sound like a healthy way to run an organization. That sounds like a culture of fear and dysfunction. And so that also is a cause for concern here that A, this punishment was unjust, and it's creating, in fact, reinforcing a culture that is not actually helpful for anybody. Uh, Nothing flourishes in a culture of fear. That's how dysfunctional governments function, not how helpful organizations function. However, it is where we are. It seems massively unlikely that the NCAA will tomorrow make any kind of systemic changes. Maybe in 20 years from now they will. But it seems like this broken system is what it is. And so then the question becomes, what do we do with it? How do we go from here? Because it's tempting to just be bitter and nasty about it and, um, badger the people who made the decision. As Coach Boynton said, they do deserve some accountability. They should be courageous enough to come speak to these players whose lives they are affecting and tell them why this is an appropriate punishment. I really like how he said that. But on the whole, it is what it is. What do we do? How do we manage it now? Well, there's a prayer from the introduction of the Chapel of Divine Mercy that I think is fitting here. It says that in difficult moments we may not despair nor become despondent, but with great confidence submit ourselves to your holy will, which is love and mercy itself. Now, again, this is not a, quote, religious case, but I present this as a test for, rather as a use for a religious mindset. To say, okay, this does not seem to be a fair outcome, this does not seem to be an appropriate outcome, but it is what it is. Maybe you might think of an example, a flood happens and ruins your house. That's not fair or appropriate. It's is out of keeping in a punishment sense from some moral activity, and yet it is what it is. Or if you're on a windy day and your finger slips in your car door and your car door dings the side of a Ferrari, the $50,000 to repair a Ferrari door is really out of keeping with the moral gravity of your fingers having slipped off your car door on a windy day, and yet here it is. You have to deal with it. And so we have the options of response to become, embittered and inside looking and dwelling on this forever and just, letting it possess us. But that's not going to be good for anybody. That's not how we move forward from this. That's how we, in fact, make the punishment worse on ourselves. So rather, let us not despair or become despondent, but trust that something greater will come from this. Again, this is a case of little significance compared to great evils that are in the world. I understand that. But it is something that really a broad range of people have at this moment a very particular connection to. And so I think it's worth talking about, that it is a chance, even in a, quote, secular sports way, to trust in divine mercy and move forward in a positive sense. Coach Boynton, I don't know anything about his religious convictions personally, but he has so far shown an ability, a good skill in diplomatically and with firm resolve moving forward from pains that are outside of his control. He's had a lot of them already. And so I trust that he'll do so again. We should do so also. To acknowledge that this is unhappy and perhaps even unjust, and it's legitimate in the right kind of way to do what we can to change the situation into justice. But that doesn't happen overnight, and may not happen at all, in fact. And so in parallel with that, it's also important to resolve, in this case and the many other ones that will come up in life, because these things happen actually a lot, to give it to the Lord, to trust that things will go well, to commend ourselves to his mercy and say, okay, I don't like this. This does not seem fair or appropriate, yet it is what it is. May something good come of it. I hope that in 3, 4, 5, 10 years we can look back and say, wow, though we did not wish it to happen, this is a good thing now. We can see that good fruits came from it. I don't know what those are, but I trust that they will be. In my life, that's been true in other cases as well, where it seemed that it was the end or the worst, and commending it to the Lord actually bore very good fruit. So as much as OSU fans in particular are frustrated, and I'm sure a lot more folks are backing us up against the NCAA, and I think that's justified, we also need to be careful to not just become embittered or despair, but to take it as a chance for something positive and to do good things with it. Thank you all for listening. God bless.